Tonight's very special guest is literally an icon of American music, a world-renowned basso who was the star for nearly 50 years at the Metropolitan Opera and continues to perform throughout the world today. I give you, without further ado, Jerome Hines. Maestro.
Rogues we live as we trade ever kindly, and regret we must bargain for gold. To friend an ever welcome hand we will extend, for though we have an ever ready conman, little more than need be told. Beyond the dawn we belong to Phaeton, making a home on the night. Beyond the plains, seek us there in vain, where the frowning hills guard us forever. For I take what I will, none can stay me, be it gold, be it pearls, or amain. Take heed, that is my creed, I take what I may please, but very often please what I have taken. The song of the frog rules my heart. Beyond the dawn we belong to Phaeton, under the stars of the night is born. Beyond the plains seek us there in vain, where the frowning hills guard us forever, forever, forever.
Maestro, pleased to have you aboard.
Good to be here.
We have a lot to cover tonight, and I'd like to get a little background. Your history, where you came from, your training, please.
Well, I was born and raised in Hollywood, California, and I decided I wanted to become a chemist at the age of 12. At the age of 16, I had gotten so withdrawn and shy that my parents got worried, and they gave me singing lessons to extrovert me. And at 16, I began to sing then as a senior in high school, and then at 16, I went to UCLA.
Well, before that,
Yeah.
what happened when you were in was it a choral group or the...
Well, in Bancroft Junior High School,
Okay.
I joined the Glee Club in the 7th grade, bought my little beanie and my purple tie or wherever it was. We did a concert, and the next morning, teacher says, somebody ruined the concert singing off pitch.
And that somebody was...
And she chested him and says, you're the one, out to music appreciation.
I love that. I love that little story. The one thing is, did the teacher ever come back, or did you ever hear from her
Well,
again?
when I was about 21 years old, I had just sung something, I think for some chiropractic group down in Los Angeles, and on the way back with my pianist, I said, let's just stop in. And we stopped in, and Mrs. Clark was her name. I said, I want to sing for you. Oh, she says, well, how nice. And I sang an aria. Oh, that's wonderful. I said, well, you kicked me out of the Glee Club.
Oh, she didn't remember. That's
No,
kinda
and
cute.
she
That's
said,
cute.
well, if you're willing to come and sing for the student body, I'll let you tell the story on me. She was very good-natured about the whole thing.
Well, wherever you are now, Miss Clark. Let's continue. When did you start with the Met? And how did you get there?
Well, I got my first opera contract with the San Francisco Opera when I was 19. And I was singing with all these big Met stars and doing a couple of nice roles. People like Larry Tibbett and the Lily Pons and Loris Melchior and all these big Jan Pierce. Mm-hmm. And so these people began going back to the Met and talking about this kid who was coming up.
Right.
And so the war started, World War II. And so I went back to college and continued my education as a chemist and as a mathematician, and was teaching Army courses and things like this in math and chemistry. And then worked for 2 years as a chemist. And the minute the war was over, I was classified 4F because I was too tall.
That's
for
funny.
the Army. And so,
You know, you literally had a day job, though.
yeah.
You kept your day job.
Yes, and I think all people who want to be opera singers, you better say, what do you do for a living? Although since that time, I've always managed to live quite well as an opera singer, but most don't.
Right.
And it was very simple. We sent a message to the Met, when do you want to hear me? Because they had been sort of wooing me a little bit. And so I ran back to New York and did an audition. Next day had a contract. And there it all began.
So it was really an early success story for you.
Yes, I always said it was a lot easier to get into the Met than it was to stay. Because I saw so many people come in and stay 2 or 3 years and gone.
How does a youngster start today?
Well, it's a different system than it used to be, and I think it used to be better. All the main teachers in those days were private teachers. They were retired opera singers, things of that sort, and they knew people in the profession, and they knew the profession. Today, it's all done in conservatories, and they do not get the personal attention that we got.
I see.
See, when I went to my first teacher, it was the brother-in-law of Gallo Curci, and he was an old pro. And right away, he decided, this kid's going to make my studio. I was the star pupil. And in a very short time, he said to my mother, he said, you can't afford all the lessons this kid needs. Let's sign a contract. And he took 10% of my career for 7 years.
Okay, all right.
Well, it was a good investment,
Right.
and it was good for me
Right.
because it meant that I was in his studio 6 days a week. He taught me to sing. He taught me operatic repertoire. By the time I was 20 years old, I knew 20 complete operas. Now these kids get out with a master's degree from any one of the big conservatories. They know 2 operas at the age of 25. They're not really prepared for opera.
I see. Okay.
And so it was a different
individualized,
Yeah.
individualized
Yes.
teaching method, if you will. Let's go forward. Where do the stars of tomorrow come from?
Well, they are going to come from, of course, most of them from the conservatories, just take the tri-state area around New York. There is a gigantic pool of thousands of starstruck youngsters with beautiful voices, and they're all good, but most of them are never going to, ever set foot on a major stage. It's a shame because they deserve a career. They've got the talent for it. And it's only some people who have that extraordinary talent. And extraordinary drive and some intelligence.
Charisma,
Yeah.
theatrical presence, whatever it makes to make a star.
Yeah.
And I think that all of the arts are like that, though. It's not only talent; it's all these other ingredients.
Yes. Yeah. There are so many other factors that can make or break a career. We have an institute here in Newark.
Before you begin, let's get back to that after the break.
Okay.
We can spend some time on that
All right.
institute.
Sometimes it's not safe to be old.
My son hit me.
They were always threatening to put me in a nursing home.
She was always taking my money.
They didn't take good care of me.
I didn't know I could get help.
I'm so glad I called. I was really afraid to call.
They got my daughter help, too.
If you or anyone you know is being abused, neglected, or exploited, call to get help.
Here is Surgeon General C. Everett Koop with a message about self-help groups, one of the nation's fastest-growing methods of coping with personal, emotional, and health problems.
Millions of Americans are finding the help they need in self-help groups, where people with similar problems talk with others who really understand. No matter what your concern, drug abuse, family problems, or a chronic health condition, there's a self-help group for you.
In New Jersey, call 1-800-4MASH.
When the heavens thunder, when the nation calls, come on, you can make a difference and be a part of it all.
Find yourself in the Army National Guard, serving 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year, and you'll find an extra paycheck, money for college, and a great way to serve your community. Call 1-800-GO-GUARD.
In the Army National Guard, you can.
were about to tell us of the International Opera Music Theater.
Yes, Opera Music Theater International. We've been in business about 9 years. It started with Montclair State College, and then I continued the program after we lost our funding through the education system. And we are not a school, we are an internship. What happens after school? And just about everybody getting out of these conservatories, they need shaping up and polishing. And then you also find that there are many factors that might prevent them from having a career, no matter how wonderful the voice might be. It could be a terrible temper. It could be just being lazy, a playboy mentality. You don't know what it is. And my staff and I, and my wife and I, we have to sort of play mom and pop and psychiatrist and everything you can think of, as well as coach and teacher, and try to eliminate those things that will prevent somebody with an extraordinary voice from having a career.
Give them the work ethic.
Oh, yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
Oh, yes.
That's the same as internship in any other field of endeavor, if you will. And I think that how do you get funded?
Well, we started off being funded through the state, through higher education, through the now extinct Board of Higher Education. We were part of Governor Tom Kaine's Governor's Challenge Grant for Excellence in Higher Ed. And Kaine saw to it that we were getting up to $1.6 million a year to carry out this project. And it was highly successful. And then when Governor Florio came in under his administration, we were cut to zero.
Okay.
And so I took over the business end and formed a corporation to continue the work that had been started at Montclair. And we get corporate funding, we get a lot of private funding, and these are things we depend upon.
What about these affairs that you run, the tribute, for instance, that you're having now in June?
Yes, we have a wonderful one coming up, and it promises to be a good fundraiser for OMTI because we have some very big star names attached with it.
Beginning with Jerome Hines and...
And then Bobby McFerrin, who is very famous in the music field. Bobby is the son of Robert McFerrin, with whom I sang at the Metropolitan in the early 50s. He was a history-making gentleman who was the first male black singer to ever perform at the Metropolitan Opera.
Now, this is a tribute to him.
This is a tribute to him, and he deserves it, believe me.
And it's being held on?
On June the 21st in Newark Symphony Hall, 8 o'clock in the evening.
Okay. And
James Earl Jones is going to be the MC. Robert McFerrin lives in Missouri, and the former governor, John Ashcroft, who is now state senator, he writes and sings his own music, and he's going to be performing with us. I remember I performed with him some years ago, and he sang after I did. He takes the mic and says, "I want a microphone that makes me sound like him." So he'll be on the program, and a whole bunch of wonderful singers.
The governor's going to love this, or the senator, I should say. Actually, the acoustics today and the technology has made the voices much stronger and better, haven't they? You tell me.
Well, I'll tell you, I think that
the purity is...
it's fine with electronic equipment, but when you're singing opera with a full orchestra, you're not using amplification. Then you're dependent upon the natural acoustics of the hall itself.
They're not using body mics or what have you?
No. Now, the Governor Ashcroft will, because he sings in a pop style.
Okay.
So he will be using something like that, but not the operatic soloist by any means.
That's interesting. Again, that's something that I didn't know as a layman.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Who else is going to be performing there?
Well, we have
at your affair,
Mr. Rucker. He is I would say, the #1 black baritone in America today. I've seen him perform the title role in Rigoletto at Baltimore Opera. I've seen him perform the title role in Macbeth in New Orleans Opera. He's phenomenal, wonderful. He should be at the Metropolitan. We're going to have one of our graduates, Mark Delavan, who is doing the title role in Macbeth in the opening of the New York City Opera season. in a new production of that opera. He's one of our pride and joys. And Susan Neves is one of our graduates who's with the Metropolitan Opera for about 4 or 5 years now. And she'll be singing something from Hernani. And we have 3 wonderful choral groups. We have the Newark Boys Chorus, we have the Ars Musica, and we have the Essex Chorale. All 3 groups of which will be doing either some show tunes or things like this, or gospel things, or they'll be doing operatic things.
Along with Bobby McFerrin.
Now, Bobby McFerrin is going to be conducting 3 numbers from Porgy and Bess, numbers that his father had. They used his father's voice in the movie of Porgy. And he'll conduct those, and then he's going to sing the accompaniment to the Bach Gounod Ave Maria, in which our graduate Mark Delavan will be doing the Ave Maria.
I see, okay.
It's going to be an interesting...
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting evening, let me tell you. And for those folks out there, be sure and set aside June 21st, Newark Symphony Hall,
right,
at 8 o'clock for this tribute to Robert McFerrin. We'll be back in a moment.
"20 kids. For 1 hour a week, you leave your concrete world of flip phones and faxes and talk to 20 kids about how business works. They will question everything, but those 20 kids will talk to 20 more. So by Saturday, what you said on Thursday could be halfway around their world. You get to make a difference. Could just make the rest of your week pretty dull. That's the new JA, teaching kids how business works.
It's a thin line between newborn and stillborn, full term and premature, between healthy and sick. If you're pregnant or think you are, getting prenatal care early is the most important step you can take. Don't put your baby's health on the line. Take care of yourself so you can take care of your baby. Find out now about getting prenatal care. Call 1-800-311-2229.
Well, as you mentioned, let's talk a little bit about Robert McFerrin. He was in the forefront of integration in opera. Am I right?
Yes, he was the first, in fact, he was the first contracted black singer to ever perform at the Met. Okay. Then they quickly, after him, they contracted Marian Anderson. She sang before him, but he became the first male black singer to perform at the Met, and I was performing with him in Faust. He debuted in Aida. I was performing with him in Faust, and it was a beautiful voice, believe me. He did other things. He was Lost in the Stars. Or he did the voice, of course, in Porgy and Bess in the movie and things like this.
Well, it must have been very difficult for him as a black coming from the South, breaking into opera in the 50s. I mean, his training must have taken place in the 30s and 40s, I would imagine. Again, you mentioned that there are not an overwhelming number of blacks in opera.
Well, women, yes. They almost dominated the field in the last 20, 30 years, but relatively few, if almost none, at the Metropolitan. We had Simon Estes, we had George Shirley, 1 or 2, but literally just almost nobody among the male singers.
Now, I go back to something, again, I'm a middle-class, average person out there. Is opera, are they opening the doors? Are there opportunities there? What's its popularity with the masses, if you will?
Well, opera has changed so drastically since I first began. When I started in '41, there were 4 opera companies, San Francisco, Chicago, the Met, and a touring company called the San Carlo. And that was it. And in 42, they started the New Orleans Opera, and I sang with them. Now, instead of having 4 opera companies, we've got probably 80 to 100 opera companies all over the country. Every state has 2 or 3 opera companies. And the advent of opera on television with the surtitles began taking the mystery out of opera. You begin to know what was going on.
You don't have to speak Italian.
Yes.
You don't have to speak German or French, or whatever.
Yeah. People used to say, oh, I don't want to go to opera. He says, I'd have to go home and study it and what it's all about. And even then, if you had read about it, you still wouldn't know exactly what they were saying at the moment. Right. And then the advent came of putting the surtitles projected on the proscenium of the theater, and that made the great difference.
Okay.
So you follow every word that's going on.
Well, how does American opera today compare with European?
Well, let's put it this way. Vienna Staatsoper, their subsidy from the Viennese government there, their subsidy is greater than the entire national endowment for the entire United States.
Okay. That gives us, that's one theater.
Yeah.
One theater,
Just
one opera
theater.
company, one opera company.
Yeah.
But in the United States here today, is opera, are we trying to popularize it? Or what did the, and I'm going to ask you this question, and after the break we'll come back with the answer. What did the 3 tenors do for opera in this country?
Right.
We'll be back in a moment for that answer.
Who are you? See more smoke. Smoke detector. And I see more smoke coming from that toaster.
Thanks for warning us, Seymour.
I hate smoke. So whenever I see it, I make this noise to warn you. Because where there's smoke, there may be fire.
Be cool about fire safety. Be cool.
Want to come up and play with the pros? Can't do it if you stay down with drugs. Because flying an F-18 at 500 miles an hour with the Navy's Blue Angels means you're at the top of your game. And the only way to get there is to stay in school and stay drug-free. Because flying, like living, is a life or drug situation.
Well, again, the question is, what did the 3 tenors do to popularize opera?
Oh boy, I'm telling you, I mean, listen, names like Domingo and Pavarotti and Carreras, these are just household names today. The spectacles that they put on are gigantic. They're
Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, what have you.
Okay. Yeah, and they sing very popular kind of things. Even the opera stuff they sing is very popular, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful influence, I think, in making people realize that opera is not painful. It doesn't have to be.
Well, let me ask you this: how do we find the opera stars of the future? We're dealing now with a global world, if you will, and you have some youngster down in Camden. And how do we discover him?
All right. Back in 1990, when we were still just the tail end of still getting state funding, we put on a production which was spectacular. We got the Critics Award for the best opera production of the year in the state. And we did a full orchestra for general public, and then 2 days later we played it for over 2,000 high school kids from all over the state. Then we took away the orchestra and took 2 pianos. Now it was done in formal costumes.
Yes.
And we toured down South Jersey, including Camden High School.
Okay.
And I remember that when we hit Camden, the principal and the vice principal were there sternly looking at this. Now, we don't want any demonstrations that are counterproductive here. And they went on for 5 minutes trying to keep these kids under control.
Right.
So I got up and I said, hey, kids, all I've been hearing for the last 5 minutes is telling you to shut up. I don't want you to shut up. I want you to yell your heads off
and sing out
at the right moment.
Right.
No, I said, if you like the tenor, you yell bravo. Now come on, yell for me. And they all yell. Now if it's a girl, it's brava. Now yell for me. Now I says, you know what opera singer is? I said, listen to this. And I yelled, hey! Now come on, yell at me. Now I said, now hold that. I said, that's what opera singers do. We yell for a living, a sustained yell. That's what we do. Now, we started like that. Well, first of all, we had 10 singers, and we had an hour-and-a-half program with only one number in English. Imagine this now. Right. But we had our narrator who described each situation, duet, trio, whatever it was. The kids, when they like something, if the soprano sings a high E flat, they would scream and cheer, you know, right in the middle of the piece, which is great.
Right, right.
And so when the show was over, I was interviewed immediately on TV, and the gal says, how do you explain this? These kids have been raised on rock and roll, and they went bananas over this production. How do you explain it? I said, lady, don't sell these kids short. It's in their genes to know something great when they hear it. Now, I didn't realize how prophetically I was talking at the time, because of the 10 singers, and I've got photographs of these singers being photographed with the kids. Of those 10, within 3 years, 5 of them were singing with the Metropolitan Opera. That is the class of singing we were bringing to the high schools. We have placed 10 soloists so far from our institute with the Metropolitan Opera. There's only one other soloist ever placed from New Jersey in the Met, from West Mitchell Choir College. Out of the 11 in history, we put 10 there.
Well, I think the kids in Camden deserve some accolades for picking them out. They probably did better than the critics would have.
Yeah, yeah.
They chose the successes.
Yeah.
Again, one more time.
Yeah.
The tribute to Robert McFerrin is when?
It is June the 21st, 8 o'clock in the evening at Newark Symphony Hall, that grand old theater. And it's a beautiful place to be, and you're going to love it. It's for full orchestra and all the star-studded cast with Robert McFerrin and James Earl Jones and the former governor of Missouri and all these opera singers. It's going to be a great show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, Jerry.
Okay.
That's it for this evening.